You know, people ask me all the time, why do you do this? Why do you not retire and read books and write fancy academic papers? And I say, yes, that is also important. But what is more important is that I was given an opportunity to read books in the first place, to engage with ideas because of the sacrifices of ordinary people. And so part of scholarship must be given back to the people in the form of public engagement. He myself was a public scholar, what we call an activist scholar or a scholar activist, who's always trying to use the knowledge that is gained from reading books, from observing people in their communities, in their society, and giving them back, in the words of a UC Guyana, giving them back to the people as a political nourishment and by extension, cultural nourishment. That's what I'm about. It's about being that public scholar whose work is not just confined to the classroom, but that classroom is extended to the public space.
Mr. Watts, he's armed himself shots. Shots, watch it, tear gas. Light rounds. Also, I can see that.
But since my cousin there, no, you come on the East Coast.
You listen to me.
Right? No, you come on the East Coast.
You listen to me.
You gotta listen to me too, man.
I am listening.
Right? Now, I see you on the East Coast. The day when they get a protest of them, the next day, that's when you see one bigger heads come up for talk to my family. Right? And that's bad. If we didn't do a protest, you want to see nobody for justice. I'm not holding back nothing. I'm not holding back nothing. I just need justice and much justice.
I get this person all of a sudden.
Who's that joker? That piece of plum. I got it, man.
And all live in peace and harmony. This is Guyana, beautiful Guyana. This is Guyana, beautiful Guyana. Diamond seekers go in the interior, pulling their creoles under the falls, singing sweet calypso as they heave on their way to dig up the diamond and the gold. Great kite shore tumbling to the river. How I love to see your foaming tide. I listen to the chirps of the cheerful kiskadee as they throw the yellow breast to the sky. Oh, Guyana, land where I was born. Oh, sweet land, shining in the sun. I could hear the monkey chatter just off the Atlantic. Land of jungles, waterfalls, and sweet scenery, where poor people farm the lands and hunt the waters, and all live in peace and harmony.
Give me the email again.
This is Guyana,
Khemraj.
beautiful Guyana. This is Guyana,
At Gmail.
beautiful Guyana. Diamond seekers go in the interior, pulling their
Khemraj,
crayons
Ramjatan 12.
under the falls,
All right. At Gmail. All right. Got it.
singing sweet calypso as they heave on their way to dig up the diamond and the gold. Great kite-shore tumbles in sweet scenery, where poor people farm the lands and hunt the waters, and all live in peace and harmony. This is Guyana, beautiful Guyana. This is Guyana, beautiful Guyana. Diamond seekers go in the interior, pulling their crayons under the falls, singing sweet calypso as they heave on their way to dig up the diamond and the gold. Great kite-shore tumbling to the river, how I love to see your foaming tide. I listen to the chirps of the cheerful kiskadee as they throw the yellow breast to the sky. Oh, Guyana, land where I was born. Oh, sweet land, shining in the sun. I could hear the monkey chatter up in a tree, and the parrots singing this melody. Oh, Guyana, beautiful Guyana. Oh, Guyana, in deep independent and free. Oh, Guyana.
And a very good evening to you, and welcome to Politics 101 on a Thursday evening. On the screen, we have Mr. Khemraj Ramjatan, leader of the Alliance for Change, and a lawyer, and coming to you with Oh My Guyana, Beautiful Guyana, written and sung by Hilton Hemudin, one of the best songs, one of the best patriotic songs to have come out of Guyana. I had the pleasure of knowing Hilton Hemudin. His father, David Hemudin, served in Buxton as the parish priest of St. Augustine Anglican Church, and Hilton lived there while his father served, and he was my first MC, meaning the leader of the acolytes or servers or altar boy, as we were called, when I joined in 1967, January 1967.
Long time.
56 years ago, and Hilton was the head of the servers at that time, and he was always playing music and so forth. He's in New York. I ran into him a few years ago, and he continues to play music. Oh My Guyana, beautiful Guyana. Beautiful song, beautiful song. Welcome all of you to Politics 101. As we come on here tonight, we have the shocking news that the PPP is no longer selling the Marriott. Oh, you heard how Mr. Jack Dio was carrying on about good economics. We have to sell when the thing is making money. And as usual, when that chap begin to talk about economics, there's a word Khemraj like to use, scamp. That business. Good evening, Khemraj.
Thank you very much, Dr. David Hines, and very good evening to you. And glad to be there when that introductory song was being sung by our son of the soil.
Thank you very much. So, Khemraj, when you heard the news today that Marriott is no longer going to be sold, and the reasons given by Mr. Jack Dio, were you at all surprised at this outcome?
I wasn't surprised at the outcome in view of the fact that I knew the motivation behind the sale. They wanted to give that Egyptian of shady background that hotel. And so they set it up knowing obviously that he might put up the highest bid and so that he can get the hotel. I am absolutely certain. This is an opinion of mine because, you know, that's how I know Jack Dio operates. And he's going to use the economic argument that let us sell the thing out. We have, it's going to drain our economy. I mean, sugar is draining our economy far more, but you're not going to sell that out. You want to sell out this hotel that is now very profitable. Now, that does not mean that it shouldn't be sold. But the trouble is, why now? It is because of the seller, the purchaser. This fella knows how to deal with these fellas. And so when we did what we did in relation to the background research that was done, and then we sent it all over the country, he now realized that he was in a jam. And he felt, boss, we can't sell to that man. That man got too much background and litigation and security commissions problems and banned. And there's some criminal charges, I think. I don't know if there was any conviction or whatever. But then he realized that this thing can't pass. And then he made a somersault. This fella could proper somersault, you know, just like how he somersault with the renegotiation with Exxon. So all of a sudden now, he realized that the PPP and his government, and probably he himself, are going to get a good battering if they only sell to this guy called Rami El Batrawi or something like that. Yeah? So that's the position. Now, he can, and he said that, look, the prices are too low. You know, one of the other thing I want to make mention of, the next highest bidder is Robert Badal,
the owner
a
of
scourge
Pegasus.
of Jagdeo, adversary of Jagdeo. Jagdeo not going to want to sell to the next buyer, but let somebody else had gotten, because I understand one said 65 and the other said 60 or something like that. Very close, the two of them came. If that was not a Badal making that, he would have sold it. I know the fella. The trouble, however, is that you're not going to sell to Robert Badal. And so all of a sudden, you're now saying that the price is too low that these bidders offered to look good, as if this by proper law of this country, to the extent that he's not going to shortchange the country. Well, with Exxon, we know that he's shortchanging it literally, especially with the 214 million US dollars audit and all of them things. He proper shortchanging because he don't want to renegotiate oil contract or nothing now. And so he gone and he said, well, you know, I am such a great servant of the people of Guyana. These fellas have bid too low, and so I will not sell it. Let me tell you this. And that kind of gaffe, he's going to go and tell the people in his support base. But let me say this. When the bids were opened and made public, when he see that the 65 and 60 million dollars, them two top people this bid, why instantaneously he didn't say bid's too low? Why only when he got all the information as to the El Badrawi guy being the kind of shady character he is, then he said, no, me ain't touching that. So it is all a sham, the excuse he is making now in relation to the price too low. Not price too low. You get caught with the pants down selling to somebody who he didn't check out and so on. And now, because if the prices were too low, because we understand from all the players that had been doing a calculation as to what this Marriott cost Guyana, it should be like about $120 million, if not more. We haven't gotten all the cost in, but you got to, when you're selling, put up a base price.
Yeah.
He ain't put up no base price. If that fella had not gotten that background, you certainly would have seen that he sell it to him, and with no base price. And we should be asking now, what is the base price for any purchaser of the Marriott? You know? And that is why he changed him out now. And he somersault, because indeed the whole arrangement was, look, I can sell out this thing. You better put in a bid and this and that and whatever.
And one of our viewers is saying, and the Skeldon estate too. Of course, he never offered to sell the Skeldon estate. Good evening to you and welcome to Politics 101. Khemraj Ramjatan here, if you're joining us from Guyana. The news tonight is that the PPP has changed its mind about selling the Marriott, and Khemraj Ramjatan is taking us behind the text, what we call the subtext. Khemraj has just pointed out that sugar is bleeding the rest of the economy. He's not selling the sugar estates, but he's selling Marriott. And we've said on this program, others have pointed out that the PPP uses the sale of state assets, uses contracts to steer money to its friends. and as the APNU guys would say, it's cronies. So the Marriott is not going to be sold any longer because, as Khemraj said, the top bidder turned out to be not an upstanding person. And the second bidder is Mr. Robert Badal, who owned the Pegasus and who is a political foe of Barra Jagdeo and the PPP. And so rather than sell it to Badal, they have decided not to sell it. Khemraj, you mentioned the $214 million that came out in the audit. Expand on that.
Well, the $214 million is the finding of the auditors as to their auditing of Exxon's expenditures. And because, as you know, profit oil will be divided literally by the certain percentages, the more that you take off as expenditures, the less you're going to get the country as a result. And we have seen and we have heard about this long before by reading the literature in it and also taking the advice of people like Vince Adams, who knows how these big operators in oil operate. Whenever they have this kind of profit share agreement with countries like Guyana, they try to jack up their expenses so that the profits will come down, and to a certain extent then that is what happened here. When they had said that their expenses would have come up to about, I think, I really can't recall the figure now, it came up based on the auditor, $214 million more that they put in the books as expenditures. So that $214 million now is now like you get a partnership agreement and one of the fellas them doing the sale, he say he sell this and he sell that, but when he sell this or he bought this or he bought that service, he buy it so expensive, so literally to change the other partner, and that is Guyana. So $214 million, the company called IHS Markit, who is the auditor, they found that this thing was not properly accounted for. $214 million. You ain't got documentation for them expenditures. It seems like it was very high and things like that. And they computed at $214 million. And then when they find out, when they finished the thing, they then sent it to the government for 2 years from March 2021. Since then days, they gave Jagdeo. Jagdeo has never literally asked Exxon, but look what the auditors have found, that you have created an expenditure here that is tantamount to an extra $214 million that was not supposed to be there. Because if when you put that in profit oil now, we're going to get half of that $214 million, $107 million, going to come back to Guyana. And that is what he was hiding when since March 2021, we in Parliament, David Patterson in Parliament, Vince Adams inside of the press conferences were saying, where is the IHS Markit report? Because we had heard that the people finished their audit and they hand it over to Jagdeo and them. But they hide it. So that audit is saying that what we should get more for the oil is $107 million more.
And Khemraj, what is Jagdeo and the PPP saying? After all, these are the people who are the patriots, the Democrats, the ones who are developing Guyana. Why are they giving away $107 million?
Well, I believe, and I even call it a Faustian deal, a deal that they work out. Keep the money, Exxon, but when we ask that you do certain things for our political base, like in quarantine, they want to put up a stadium that is of similar stature and Status and so on, Providence, and they're going to put them up at Palmyra. And they're going to get the monies from these people who are going to help now. Or they're going to get to do things within their political base, like Essequibo and so on. So what they're going to do is to ask Exxon from your social corporate responsibility, hey, build something up there. Build a cycle track at Essequibo, and so on. And they can go and tell back the people, you see, we are working along very collaboratively with Exxon. This is the trick in the thing. And so the money doesn't pass through the parliament till we could discuss where these revenue streams are going, but they work out some deal whereby they allow the people to keep our $107 million. And that is the only logical conclusion I can come to. Because if indeed the people spend money in extra whatever, legal whatever, or extra contractual arrangements, then all you got to do is please, the auditor has found that you did this, more profits should come to the country, $107 million more, and please, I want the money to put in the consolidated fund. But no, he hide the report. He hide the report. And then when Stabrook News get the report and start publishing all these things, and people like Anand Gulsaran analyzing it, I also managed to get a copy of the entire report. I sent it to everybody. Yeah. This is what you have to do as a politician who also came by the report. And they just did not do anything even after that. They have not called in. They want to tell IHS market that y'all are stupid people, that really Exxon didn't overexpend or whatever by $214 million. Is y'all, the auditors, get them wrong. Exxon is right. Do you see the incestuous relationship that this Jagabat now got with Exxon? And that is what Guyanese must understand about this fella. I mean, this is how he bypassing that now. By that bypass. He always does bypasses. Bypass the Marriott by doing that. Bypass even a vice presidency, because he literally run in this country, you know.
Yeah.
And that is how he bypassed the constitutional provision in relation to 2 terms and no more. So he not turned president for a 3rd term. But effectively, he is, substantively, he is running this country. He in charge of finance, he in charge of oil and gas. 2 biggest thing. And he's the one that said that we're going to renegotiate and review the contract. It's the rottenest contract we ever got. No, it was not the rottenness. It had its imperfections. But whatever it is, he is making it, if he call him rotten, he is making it even more rotten by not performing his obligations as one of the partners, which is, or are, to see that flaring is not done. You're allowing Exxon to do the flaring. You're allowing Exxon to throw the hot water with oil and toxic chemicals and so on inside of that ocean. That's why them fishermen can't catch fish and so on. He's allowing the guarantee, parent company guarantee that Vince so often talk about, which is that assuming there is an oil spill, all the expenses to clean up the oil must come from Exxon parent company, which is the rich one. They set up a subsidiary here in Guyana. So if we go after the subsidiary, you're not going to get nothing. So we were asking that we want a parent company guarantee that they're going to pay for all the cost, because when an oil spill with such a big setup broke and all the oil start floating in the ocean and so on, it will cost billions and billions of dollars. And although Vince Adams had gotten them to almost come home with that, because he was not going to open certain of the rigs, he was not going to license them, they gone and literally bow down and say, yes, you are our Lord, Exxon. And that is what is happening here. When we signed that deal, we knew that it is going to bring in a lot of monies. And then you got to be strict with them. You got to get big professional people who know how to deal with them. And that is what Vince Adams was. That is what Dr. Jadupat was. He would have been asking them for all the information so he could put it on the GYEITI thing and so on. Uganda, and he knocked them off. That other fella from the unit, Bino and so on, they know about the thing. No! But they got some jagabats they know who running all them and they can't hold Exxon to account. And he himself, along with Vikram Bharat, now hiding the IHS market report audit. It's shameless what they are doing. But it doesn't surprise me, the question that you had asked earlier. It does not surprise me because this is how these people operate a long, long time, long before 2015. Yeah. Remember? Corruption all over the place. And let me tell you something. The Americans not going to take it lightly what they're doing with corruption in Guyana and all this nasty thing and so on about the permanent secretary. I mean, I cannot understand her explanation in that message that she gave a couple hours today, earlier today. Well, what is that? What are they saying here? And do you know, David, we in that constitutional reform process of 2000 to 2002, we amended our constitution to create what is called a national public security sectoral committee, so that we will go to Parliament and ask questions about what is happening to crime, what is happening to the Kanu people, what work they're doing, certain reports. Of course, we're going to hold them in certain confidentialities because it's a special committee. Under the regime of the coalition, we had so many meetings. Them fellas, Harry Gill and all of them, said they want to go and see police station in the interior. We use parliamentary monies and we gone inside in the interior. They wanted to cross-examine Silal Prasad as to how what he got as programs for the next 5 years in the coalition government. Silal had to tell them everything. The fire chief, they call up there, subpoena him. I did the subpoena, tell them, but they didn't need subpoena. They came after I told them, yes, you got to come and answer all the questions and so on. Now, since they gone in there, not one word did they appointed us after the first meeting of appointing the members. And Mr. Ben never, ever convened a meeting so that we could call up Mr. Hicken. We could call up the new fire chief. We could call up all the relevant players that come on the Home Affairs Ministry in relation to security and ask them questions. We have an obligation to be confidential. I ain't going to come and tell you necessarily matters of an official secret nature and all that. But nothing has happened now. It's a total blockage. And that is why you can have, when you get blockage like that and you have no scrutiny, all manner of things insiders like the PS can do. And then gets your phone taken away and gets your visa revoked and so on. Americans don't revoke your visa like that. They don't take away your phone like that unless there are suspicions they're lurking all around about what you're doing there. And that is what, by virtue of not wanting to speak to the truth and to meet the public demand for what went wrong here, we are going to have unenlightened speculation, as it were. Yeah. And that is what's going to dominate the day.
Khemraj Ramjatan, the leader of the Alliance for Change, member of Parliament, former Minister of Public Security, the old Minister of Home Affairs, so he knows what he is talking about. Of course, he's an attorney at law. Khemraj, something jumped out at me around that issue, the young lady, the permanent secretary. She was going to China, not on official government business, but on PPP business, according to what Ben is saying, to attend the political conference on behalf of the PPP. This is the permanent secretary. You serve in government.
Look, permanent secretaries are not supposed to be political animals.
Yeah.
The political animal in that ministry there is the minister.
That's right.
And they're supposed to be a completely professional and apolitical. And that is what Daniel McCalman was there doing. And even Miss Johnson, even before, you know. But then they go and they put away this girl, Daniela, and they gone and they take this one here. And look what kind of thing she bring upon us now. It's a very sorry thing. It's a tarnished Guyana when your permanent secretary is going to have her visa revoked. And we really got to get to the bottom of it. Because as city minister, I mean, I could understand he will want to support her in the meantime. But we got to get to the bottom of it. And that is why institutions like the Public Security Sector Committee of Parliament or the Parliamentary Security Sector Committee, there is where we could go and bring her, subpoena her, and ask her questions about that. But they block the entire process. You can't go to that committee. If you got anything that you wanted in relation to how the affairs of the fire chief or the public administration of the Home Affairs Ministry or the police force or KANU, that is where we must go. Because opposition must have a knowledge of what is going on. In America, they just tell the leader of the opposition, like, you know, if certain things are happening and they got to do certain secretive things and so on. But you don't cover up. Remember the Contra affair in which people are selling guns and so on? One big investigation and they made rules and so on. We built on all of that when we, in the constitutional reform process, said you got to get this small select committee that is going to get information from the minister about what is happening here. Because publicly the minister and so on are going to tell you anything. And probably he might not even know anything either. Yeah. So you call the girl herself. Hold on a minute. You come here. I want you to answer questions. Just like how all of them, inclusive of Gail and all of them, they wanted Courtney Samuels and they wanted this body and they wanted all of the high officials that we that were there for these various police and fire and so on, KANU officials and so on. But we can't even scrutinize them now.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing lack off. Ben not calling any meetings of the Public Security Committee.
Khemraj, while you're on that subject of the parliament and the way in which the executive is, in a sense, bullying the parliament and preventing the parliament from doing its oversight work, because constitutionally, the National Assembly is supposed to be a check on the executive. That
Absolutely,
is,
yeah.
That's how it is. Now, the opposition voted along with the government to expand the number of judges in the Court of Appeal. And you spoke on the matter and give your assent to it. Some people wondered whether that is not opening the way for the PPP to pack the courts.
Oh, no. I look, that possibility or probability can still be there.
Mm-hmm.
But you have a tremendous amount of litigation today as against when we had a maximum of 5 judges under the law, 2 to 5. Now we have gone 5 to 9. Yeah. Actually, we only have 3 judges that are Court of Appeal judges there. 3. The Chancellor and 2 others. And of course, the Chief Justice, who is at the High Court, she could also go up there because so it's like we have 4. Yeah. But you need 2 sets of people dealing with that tremendous amount of litigation that is going up from the High Court and the full court to what is called the Court of Appeal. Right? And you need more judges. We had talked about this thing a long time ago, even since when I was president of the Guyana Bar Associations 15 years ago. It is important, but a lot of things did not happen, and it was not favored, and a whole lot of things. And then they're saying that it will be lots more costly and so on. Well, we got all the oil money now. You know, we got plenty money now. So at least help litigation flow smoother, and to an extent more efficiently, expeditiously. And I supported it because indeed, if we were in government too, we would have passed that law and bring it on stream. So, but yes, indeed, now that you got, if they carry it to 9 and they're gonna let's say appoint 8 judges, so you could have 2 sets there. Well, fine, but we know that there are a little check and balance with the Judicial Service Commission has to make recommendations for these Court of Appeal judges to the president and so on. I hope it is not going to be abused. I hope that they behave well, and the best of our judges are going to be promoted upwards to the Court of Appeal. But not because you might have that as a potential, you are not going to increase so that the litigation, because I tell you what too, David, political cases come far and few. A lot of the cases that the judges got to deal with are between citizen and citizen, or the state and citizen. So you're not going to get plenty cases like that period, 2020, when we had so many cases. And then we always have the apex court that I have tremendous respect for. So if any of them want to do any kind of thing there and rule in a certain way and whatever, you go to the CCJ. And the CCJ will say, well, what kind of judgment is this? Or it will condemn, or it will critique and then reverse. So I have no problem even with that possibility existing, because you can easily go and appeal the decision higher up. But we need more judges for purposes of getting the litigation out.
Khemraj Ramjatan here tonight, clarifying for us the opposition's support of the new act now that expanded the number of judges on the appeal court. Khemraj staying in the National Assembly, on that very day, the government tabled the bill for this national
intelligence and security
this national intelligence body that they are putting in place. We learned subsequently from the press that the PPP saying that this thing is not a new thing, that they put it in place since they were in government before, and it was continued under the coalition government. I think you made reference just now to the Security Committee in the Parliament. Explain for us first why your government continued with the arrangement, if it's true, if what the PPP says it's true, why your government continued one. So that's one question. And secondly, why the PPP is now taking it to Parliament and to have a law now empowering this this agency.
Look, I want us not to be too, I mean, when it comes to matters of national intelligence and security, we always must, as a rule of thumb, be very, very cautious about it. But indeed, when we got into government, we, not immediately, but I think sometime thereafter.
2 years later.
Yeah, the president saw it fit. And of course, we all, I was asked and so on. And it was said that this is a body that largely will brief the government of the day as to what are the important intelligence issues that they are dealing with. And I would like to tell you that indeed, just prior to our cabinet meeting, we used to have the briefing from the head of the police, the head of the what was called the National Intelligence Unit, or the National Security Committee. It is just behind the Castellani House, the Kanu head, the fire chief, the prison head, and so on. These are the legitimate leaders of the lawful institutions that deal with matters of national security. The GDF boss, Mr. Mark Phillips, used to come. Okay? I can't go into what we discussed because that, of course, is difficult.
Right.
But we needed to be informed as to what is happening with syndicatos. We are the government. We are the elected government. Okay? And we are hearing that somebody get murdered up at the area there. I, as public security in New Guyana, a lot of our ministers who are very concerned don't know what. Okay, all right. Well, it is a useful instrument to know because the Commissioner of Police is going to come and give a report on that and other questions that certain other senior ministers and vice presidents that were there. I remember the president, myself, Carl Greenwich, and Harmon. And then we will then report back to the cabinet. I thought it was an extremely useful setup for purposes of informing our larger cabinet what some of the issues for that week, because it was held weekly. And I understand that that is how it used to be held prior to 2015. So I thought it was a useful thing. Indeed, when I had learned about the thing set up and so on, prior to 2015, I had indicated why, if indeed this is the useful nature of it, I think it was Clement Rohi who had reported about it. Why is it not as part of our law? Legalize and legitimize it just like the Police Act, like the Defense Act, like the Kanu piece of legislation, the Fire Act, the Fire Service Act, and so on. And well, it wasn't, because after that, well, it didn't happen the first 2 years in our administration. It's down on the bottom end, and the bottom end, we had so much a problem with Sharon Das and oh Lord, and so on. But indeed, there was a proposition that it should be legitimated by virtue of legislating. And however, I want to do a comparison and this is where I'm going to go back to find out if what is in this act is exactly as we knew what was going on, so that we don't see that the PPP using it now as a separate institution that is then going to make de minimis the police force and things like that, because there's some strong language used here. And that was not the intention, how we want to use our National Intelligence and Security Agency. It must never overrun the Guyana police force, a civilian professional police force, and then go and do a kind of a surveillance society. They're going to bear into your telephone and this and that and all kind of wickedness. You got to go to court and get court orders before you can do certain things. You understand what I mean?
Yes,
so that
yes.
The human rights of the country, citizens, are not going to be affected. So it is a plenty work I got over this holiday period and so on. So and I don't want to talk much more about it.
Right? Understandably so. It is. The opposition has asked for it to be sent to select committee.
Well, I don't know. I was a little busy today. I don't know if it was. Yes, this thing got to be sent to the select committee. As a matter of fact, we had asked because we had wanted I had intended, I tell you honestly, to talk about it in the Public Security Sector Committee of Parliament.
Right.
Because that is a safer place. You don't want because you can ask a lot of questions about what this means and what that means,
right.
And so on. But the select committee is an ideal place too. And we put people there to find out what that means, what that provision means. Is it going to an overreach in relation to privacy issues, overreaching and so on? Because, look, I want Guyanese to be safe, but they must have their liberties. Every time you try to strengthen security, you just got to give away a little bit of liberty. But we must try as best as possible to make that the exceptional case. We mustn't give it away like that. And that is why we have to be very, very careful. A lot of people are going to be very suspicious about it, and they're right to be suspicious about it. But it is an institution that should be legitimated by legislation, if we're going to have one, and to be done as early as possible.
And of course, the bottom line is that it must not be a substitute for the constitutional forces, meaning the
Absolutely.
army and the police.
Absolutely.
Yes. Khemraj, earlier this week, the court handed down its decision on the matter brought by the APNU over whether the president was guilty of dereliction of duty for not engaging the opposition leader in the substantive appointment of the two heads of the court, meaning the Chief Justice and the Chancellor. And the court seems to say that the onus was on the opposition leader to press the government, press the president, and that the opposition, because it for some time didn't have an opposition leader, etc., etc. But the court then said that it should be expedited. What do you make of the ruling?
No, I respect the ruling of the court, and I am happy that the court emphasized that we are in an inglorious state, as it said, whereby for years now, over 10 years, I don't know, more than 10 years probably,
more than 10
where
years.
we haven't had a Chief Justice, substantive Chief Justice, and a substantive Chancellor. And the Attorney General, my good friend, very loquacious, you're going to talk plenty, feels that he win the case. Win non-case. The case was largely to give the public or draw public's attention to what is happening, and moreover to get that a high court of our land, a branch of the judiciary, is saying that please go ahead and hammer out this issue, because the Constitution provides for an agreement. The president shall appoint these two persons, these two office holders, after there is agreement between him and the leader of the opposition. The leader of the opposition has already indicated, look, the two people who are there acting, I would like them to be appointed. And, it is very difficult for the president to say that, I don't want this person or that person, in the sense of these people being there for such a long time. It is a little disastrous quality of our politics that this is, we agreed to this as a constitutional provision by the agreement of the leader of the opposition and they can't come around. It's the same thing that probably they happened in relation to the Patterson matter.
Right.
Remember? The chairman of the Elections Commission.
Yes.
We somehow got to learn to hammer out with each other. We have to engage, and we have to learn to come to the realization that, okay, give and take, this person and that person are the two most senior persons in this judicature. Please, we are going to go and appoint them Chancellor and Chief Justice. The AFC has come out a long time that these two persons should be appointed.
Yeah.
But it is something between
one thing that jumped out at me, Khemraj, is the court suggesting that if the status quo continues with no substantive head, it compromises the integrity of the court.
No, it does. It does. When you are not there substantively, you could be held like a yo-yo. You might very well feel that when I write the decision one way, I think they might appoint me. And then your principals tell you, but This is the correct way, the other way. And so that is the psychological impact and effect of not being substantively appointed. And I think there is a Scottish case in the point that it might be unconstitutional if you don't appoint, because the independence of the judiciary, which is a constitutional principle too, is being affected by the non-appointments of these people. So it is important that we now get it right, and I think that is what the judge, Justice Damon Young, yes, Madam was saying, please get your act together. And I believe that Irfan Ali, His Excellency, should very well go and call the man up and say, well, fine. But the Attorney General did indicate to me that he got to go through something to get a Public Service Commission's chairman. We only yesterday, that night, we also appointed the 2 other people to make up the Public Service Commission. And then they're going to get a chairman. That chairman would also be a member of the Judicial Service Commission. And it would appear that they want to do the thing, waiting for the establishment of the Judicial Service Commission. There is no need for a Judicial Service Commission. The constitutional provisions say agreement between leader of the opposition and the president. And so I don't know why he wants to wait for Judicial Service Commission to be established and all of that. That might take a long time. We don't know how long that will take. But now that the judge has ruled, and the way she did, don't know if it will be appealed, and then it could go right up to the Court of Appeal, and then it could go right up to the Apex Court. And the Apex Court could use some judicial activism and say that you must do it within 6 weeks. Look, that judicial set of persons you got up at the Apex Court, they have done that in that same case with Marcus Bisram.
Yes. The DPP.
the DPP case.
Talk a little bit about that legislation.
Yeah, well, but I want to bring home the point that it might be a useful thing for this court to go right up to the CCJ for a ruling.
Yeah.
Because this thing, that Court of Appeal in another matter, not necessarily the exact matter that deals with the issue, that Apex Court has enunciated what we lawyers call arbiter dicta, right? Made statements pronouncing that please get these 2 people appointed outside of the court too. I understand the president of the court giving some lecture somewhere also talk about it.
Yeah.
So if it needs a ruling in the matter, I am certain that CCJ will very well want to use some judicial activism and say that what the president is doing by not, at least the opposition leader has given him the 2 names and so on, he is not appointing, then there might be some consequences to that. And he could put timelines, because what this court ruled is that there is no timeline. But you could get now, because if the basic structure of our constitution is being eroded by timelines going for 10 years now and you can't appoint, a court could very well interpret and say, look, we are not going to allow the politicians of the day who got a duty to ensure that we get a chancellor and a chief justice to continue this madness for any longer. And they could very well say that we got constitutional powers and whatever. In that Bisram case, they did go a far way. Look, our law as it stood for 40 years or 50 years was that the DPP get the power to instruct a magistrate and tell the magistrate who discharged an accused, look, in a preliminary inquiry, that is, you commit Bisram. And of course, this matter was dealt with by Geoff Haynes, Crane, and Messiah. And all 3 of them at the Court of Appeal, and that was when the Court of Appeal was our final court. But it was a fantastic court. Them fellas there were tremendous
Oh, yeah,
legal luminaries.
you call three titans there.
Yes, right. And they ruled that although there might be certain things about this approach, that the DPP got so much of power to order a magistrate to commit a man to stand trial, this law, when it was made, was saved and can't be held unconstitutional. They all three of them believed that it was, in a sense, affecting the rights of the accused. But because of a certain savings clause that said, before the Constitution came into being, all the laws that we had there, all them laws before 1966 are saved and they are held to be constitutional. Right? So that is what saved it then with that Court of Appeal. Well, of course, these lawyers, and lawyers are like that, we're going to find a new argument and whatever, or bring back the old argument of those lawyers that were arguing it against the DPP then, and they used back that argument at the CCJ. And the CCJ said, look, we are, and they used a very nice principle of modification, and also a principle that if it affects human rights, and it affected the accused human rights and so on. And they then interpreted in such a way that they said it is unconstitutional, reversing the Court of Appeal of Geoff Haynes. Right? So, okay, well, now that is our law. It is just like the slavery law in America. For 100 years, they said slavery was constitutional. Until then, you got that famous case that says, no, slavery is not constitutional. It is unconstitutional, and so on and so on. Remember? The legal evolution happens in this way. And a new, nice argument comes up. And based on the culture and the values that have changed and all of that, you can get a new argument. And that is what's happening. So we can get an argument that will be being to that extent that the CCJ in connection with this 10-year drought of our Chancellor and Chief Justice being appointed substantively.
Khemraj, let's get to the local government before we go. Your party, along with the WPA, have decided that they are not going to participate in the local government elections. The PNC said it reluctantly decided to participate in the local government elections. Since nomination day, the PNC seems to have found a lot of skullduggery happening in relation to candidates and the list that support candidates. And today, the chairman of the Elections Commission said that GCOM cannot deal with those matters. She seemed to be suggesting that those matters have to be dealt with in the court. Your interpretation, your view on how we should proceed on this issue.
Well, look, my view first, I think I am now vindicated, and WPA is vindicated in not participating. I knew that this, I won't cuss, but this nonsense would have happened. But it also now, what is coming out and floating at the top is the nastiness of the PPP, and especially, again, the chief campaign manager for the PPP, Bar Jagdale, when he now going around telling people as General Secretary of the party to go and collect your nominations, the nominators and the nominees and the candidates and so on. And one set of corruption is being found out now. You know, some things like that we had found inside of that recount. But that people can't vote. Here that people sign in. It's a stinking shame. And they want to say that people, you know, look, these things could very well happen. And across the board, when it happens, what we got to do as a democracy is to ensure that we have a remedial mechanism that could solve these problems. The recount, I suppose, could have been one of those things. The trouble is that it is fundamental that we understand that there could be mischief makers. And mischief makers can happen from all parties. What stops the mischief or minimizes it is to ensure that you make sure that nobody that dead on the list. Nobody that they're overseas up on the list. Look how much overseas people sign up now. You know, for all you know, them overseas people that ain't there here, they gonna go and vote too. And
Well,
that is why you want to cleanse.
We confirmed almost 5,000 of them voting in 2020.
Exactly.
Which is a seat.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that came from the immigration records, from the police force. I hope they're keeping those records safe.
Well, Mr. Nandilal asked G-Com to turn over the records to him. So he has the records, and I too hope. Now, what do you make of Justice Singh, retired Justice Singh, Claudette Singh, saying that G-Com cannot deal with that matter from a legal standpoint?
Well, you know, I honestly respect the legal opinion of Madam Justice Singh. As a matter of fact, when I came into the legal profession, she was one that I looked up to because she was in the criminal law stream at the assizes and so on. And I was at the DPP's chambers. And I have tremendous respect for her. So unless I could come up with a better legal opinion, I will stick with her because I didn't take a look at the law, quite frankly. And if she is saying, having taken a look at the law, that indeed it is a matter for police and the other things and so on, I suppose that will have to be carried there. But she must take note of all of these things and make some strong remarks against those PPP officials that did this. Same handwriting. And they come up with this flimsy excuse that, you know, the first one was we had the people sign, but they didn't sign clear, so I go and do back the thing. What kind of nonsense is that?
Let me ask you this. Even if you agree with our opinion, and I am tempted to go down the road that you are going down, that she has given a legal opinion, does that stop G-Com from administratively? Because remember, the court said during the 5 months that G-Com can correct things. This is the ruling in that first case that the PPP brought. That G-Com could correct things.
Absolutely, because in the Constitution, it provides a whole gamut of powers, a panoply of powers there for G-Com to do. So when you see this thing here now, G-Com should make sure and come out with strong statements and denunciations that this here, and coming from the PPP know that it is weak in certain areas. But they want to play big buy that they could go and take away PNC votes and so on. Look what they got to go and do. And they're paying people $20,000 for get signatures and so on. Look, they're in shame. Let me tell you something. Just like how they're rigging the treasury, they're rigging the governance institutions of the country. They're gonna rig that same local government elections. Check it out for me. Because these people want to show the world that they're all powerful. They are not all powerful. They got the oil money. Try as best to be good servants of that oil money and let it be distributed all across the country. But no, they don't want to. Up to today, we can't hear from the natural resource committees that were formed. You know, the investment committee, the public accountability committee, the other resource committees and so on, that they name people like they're functioning. It is crazy what is happening with governance in this country. And it is all I put at the feet of the PPP and especially Barajagdeo. He wants to be numero uno. Mm-hmm. And he go on to sidetrack all of these fellas, bypass them. And that is what he's doing. You got to get rid of him. The PPP got to get rid of him.
Yeah. Khemraj, as a political activist, as a lawyer, whatever you think about the report that the Commission of Inquiry set up by the PPP handed over yesterday, you must have glanced at it.
Well, it's through the reports, the various reports, Dennis Cabral and so on. It doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me because indeed there was a complete boycott of a different narrative. And what else could these commissioners have ruled? And that is exactly what the PPP wants it for.
Yes.
They know that indeed this would have happened, and the propaganda effect and so on. But let me tell you something, David Hines. The Guyanese, especially the East Indians, Albion and Skeldon and so on, they ain't getting 3 square meals.
There you go.
And they are vexed with them. Businessmen, East Indian businessmen are vexed with them. So they could go and say, well, there's propaganda here and propaganda there. Oh, and this happened at the elections and so on. That well, of course, I didn't see that them saying that the elections was rigged by any party that participated and things like that.
Right.
They said that these certain officials within GCOM did certain things. Of course, the courts have to deal with that too, and so on. But they're not bringing up these prosecutions so that they could be heard early too.
Right.
Yeah, they got the people dangling there. In any event, the trouble is, when we read the report, we are going to know if they're going to say that, because they're gone and they tell the people how Ramjatan rigged the elections. Oh gosh, how Cathy Hughes was involved. This and everybody from the AFC rigged the election. That is what the PPP is good at.
Yeah.
But nowhere in that report could ever reveal that kind of thing. No, they were, and so people must also read the report as to what transpired.
Yeah.
And who probably were the persons that they're holding responsible.
Yeah. But Khemraj, all of us had to go to university. Some of us teach there. When you do a piece of research, you usually say upfront, here are the weaknesses of this research. I did not get to interview so and so persons and so on. I mean, you did not get to talk to the entire opposition about what went on. You went with one narrative when the recount is there as another narrative. So even people didn't want to go and to give evidence, the recount is public knowledge.
And the recount was sent to them, I understand.
Yeah, I mean, so one is led to conclude that this was another farce. I was hoping that whatever they did, they would have acknowledged at least that we ain't hear the other side. You see?
It was kind of ex parte.
Yeah.
But here, look, I don't want to be condemnatory. The opposition decided not to go. And so it is like in a court of law, if you file an action against a defendant and the defendant won't go, the judge grant decision against the defendant for the plaintiff. And I think that is what happened here. It is a political kind of a litigation, not the necessary judicial litigation. And so that ought to operate, and they probably ought to have said that these are the weaknesses too. But of course, I don't know if they said that. I still have to read the report. But let's see. I probably will make more pronouncements as we go along.
Khemraj Ramjatan, leader of the AFC, member of parliament, former minister of public affairs and public security, and himself a veteran lawyer, really walking us through a number of cases here tonight. And, Khemraj, I am a strong believer in judicial review. I think that is the pillar of any justice system. And it's good to see the court being so active. That's because correct. It says something about democracy. If your court is not doing the review that it is supposed to do, your democracy dies. Closing remarks?
I agree with you totally. Our liberties can be in jeopardy, but our courts, in my view, are going to be its savior. The democracy is pretty fragile. It is going to be made a little more fragile because the oil monies that we have, that makes vulnerable conflicts that are going to be normal, regular conflicts can take on more deep-seated disharmony about them, and so on. So the courts will have to come to calm us down and tell us that this must be done, and so on. And so it is important that we rely heavily on that and respect the courts. But thanks for at least allowing me to elucidate a couple of the points that you said you wanted me to. And we'll be here at your beck and call, my brother.
Thank you very much. And of course, your press conference, the AFC press conference is tomorrow. What time?
I think it might be 1 o'clock tomorrow.
At 1 o'clock. The press conferences now have become public conferences because of the media. You see, 5,000 views, 10,000
No, but that media is also, the fourth estate, it is called, is so fundamental to the democracy too. Yeah? And we got to get the reporters not being, remember how I ended my article, the withering of the press? Wither the press, sorry.
Yeah.
We must not be servile. We have to make sure that is the press people, yourself, doing somewhat like a journalist here, calling a politician up to answer questions and so on and to give information. That is an important function. We have to enlighten the public out there, and reporters, the media, property owners for newspapers and so on. They got to do the job, and they must almost uncircumscribe.
And in light of the recent attacks on media people for doing the job, it becomes even more imperative that we fight as hard as we can to protect the media, even if sometimes we political people get annoyed with them. Even the partisan media, like the Chronicle and the Guyana Times, have a right to exist, and their freedom to do their work must be respected. Khemraj, until, and for those of you who have stayed with us, all of you in your great numbers. Selwyn Peters is saying the Commission of Inquiry report was weak and the recommendations subpar. Selwyn owes us an appearance on politics. I saw him somewhere in the media. Was it on Globespan? God, I look at so many of these things. Or was it on Mark Benshop? My goodness. God, it's part old age and part at nights. I have to do what political activists and political scientists do. I have to watch all of these shows. So I set aside 3-4 hours per night to catch up on all of these shows, because you can't only know what you are saying or what your side is saying. You have to know what everybody's saying. Selwyn, I saw you on something, bench cop. I know. I look at too many of these things and I sometimes can't. Selwyn, you owe us an appearance on Politics 101. We'll talk. Good night. Tomorrow night we continue our series, Race, Ethnicity, and Politics. We started that conversation with Vincent Alexander last week, Friday. Race, Ethnicity, and Politics. We're going to continue that tomorrow night on Black Matters. We're going to be discussing race, ethnicity, and politics. Vincent is coming back, and we are going to have a broadened panel to continue to explore this issue of race, ethnicity, and politics. See you all tomorrow, same time. I understand that the protest continued today and will be continuing tomorrow outside of GCOM. It's good to see. It is good to see some bodies on the ground. It is good to see some politicians and other leaders out there. If you're in Georgetown or near to Georgetown, join the protest in front of GCOM. I seem to believe that there is much more to develop around these local government elections. I am not sure yet that all of us will not end up boycotting that election. Because if the rate at which we are going, I understand the PNC today show about 3 dead people. It was 1 couple of days ago. I think we are on to something. I think we're on to something. Good night.